In the days of World War II, in early November, a sergeant at an army base in the Deep South, he got a call from a woman who said, "Sir, we live by the base, and for Thanksgiving, we like to entertain some soldiers at our house." And the sergeant replied, "Wonderful. We'll send them over, and on behalf of the Army, thank you for your hospitality." "It's our pleasure," she said, "but Sergeant, just one more thing. Please don't send us any Jews." He paused, and he said, "Understood." Thanksgiving Day came, and the woman was setting her table when there was a knock at the door. She opened the door, and to her utter shock, there were 5 African-American men in uniform standing there. "What are you doing?" she snapped. One of the soldiers answered, "We understand that you invited us for Thanksgiving." "This is not what I meant. This is a terrible mistake," she responded. To which the soldier said, "No, ma'am, Sergeant Goldberg never makes a mistake." The joke reflects the close relationship between Jews and blacks in the mid-20th century, the things they shared and the ways that they worked together and looked out for and stood up for one another. Now, it was not perfect by any means in many places and in many ways, but this morning I'd like to speak about the allies that we need today. Our Parsha begins, and Moshe gathered the entire assembly of Israel, the entire children of Israel, and instructed them regarding the Mishkan. Vayakel Moshe et kol adat b'nei Yisrael. Now, most classic commentators notice the Torah's emphasis on gathering the whole Israelite community, kol adat b'nei Yisrael. Everyone was included, the men, the women, and the children. But I'm thinking to myself, what about the other people, the non-Israelites? Did Moshe gather them as well? Did Moshe enlist their help in this project? If so, why are they not specified? If not, why not? I believe the answers to these questions contain an important message for us as a people and for people of other faith backgrounds about our Jewish community and our world. So let's go back for a moment to the Exodus story. After being enslaved for over 200 years, the Israelites escaped in the middle of the night. We know the story well from Pesach, which will be celebrated 3 weeks from now. The Israelites left so quickly, as you know, they didn't have time for their bread to rise. But who exactly went out? We read in the Torah, the Israelites journeyed from Ramses to Sukkot, 600,000 individuals. Moreover, a mixed multitude went up with them. V'gam erev rav ala itam. The mixed multitude, in Hebrew erev rav, were likely a varied group of forced laborers who glommed on to the Israelites. They took advantage of the confusion of that Exodus night to flee. And we could understand why they'd want to get away from Egypt. With the Israelites gone, more of the back-breaking labor might fall on them. Now, admittedly, Jewish tradition has mixed things to say about this mixed multitude. Rashi says that they eventually converted to Judaism, but a significant strand of commentators sees them as perpetual thorns in the side of the Israelites. They note that the word erev, mixed, shares the same root as arov, the 4th plague, usually translated as wild beasts. In other words, the Erev Rav were not just innocent followers, they were spies who sowed dissension, instigating the sin of the golden calf and other rebellions in the desert. It's for that reason that Moshe Vayakel, he gathered the whole Israelite community to separate them from the Erev Rav as they began this building project. Now, it's understandable why Jewish commentators over the ages read the story this way, but it's more likely a reflection of the unique time and place in which they lived than the Torah's time. In other words, medieval European commentators might have felt threatened, often for good reasons, by their non-Jewish neighbors. And so they looked on with suspicion at those who attached themselves to their Jewish community, like the Erev Rav. But I want to say that for us today, it doesn't have to be that way. It certainly is not. The Erev Rav, they had good reasons for wanting to leave Egypt. Perhaps they fled because they thought that Egyptian society was crumbling and they didn't want to stay in an oppressive society, even if they were not the ones being enslaved. Or maybe they fled because after the plagues, they saw our God was more powerful than the Egyptian gods. Or maybe they were friends with the Israelites, even families with the Israelites, and they weren't going to abandon them in the desert in their hour of need. So they left together. Now, the word Erev means not only mixed, it also means sweet. Think of Yerav lo yedidu tachmino fetzuv v'chol ta'am. More than ever, today we need a sweet multitude of people to journey with us and to help us build our community. One of those truly sweet people, sweet groups of people who are integral members of our community are those who have converted to Judaism. Despite the growing anti-Semitism, there have been a surprising number of people who have joined the Jewish people in this past year. There's no better way to stand with us than truly to join us. And we are blessed to have you as part of our community and part of the covenant. When I think about Vayakel, gathering our whole community together, Jews by choice are clearly included. There's another group of people who are members of our community, married to a Jewish partner. Sometimes they practice another faith, often they practice no faith, but they and their interfaith families have chosen Bethel as their Jewish home, as a place to raise their Jewish children. They've not committed to the covenant, and we respect that decision, but they have committed to our community, and we celebrate and are grateful for them. When I think about Vayakel gathering our whole community together, I think of them as well, for they are included. There's much more to say about the sweet mixed multitude that is Bethel, but this morning I want to speak about another group, those not directly tied to the Jewish people, but adjacent to it, our allies. They too sweeten our lives and sweeten the bitterness of these days. Let me ask, is there anyone here who has never been in a synagogue before? A handful of you. Well, thank you so much for being here. At Bethel, we enjoy hosting church tour groups and B'nai Mitzvah friends who come from other faith backgrounds. It's an opportunity for us to share about Jewish tradition and our Jewish community. And in the process, we hope to develop more allies. As an aside, Bethel could use some more tour guides. Don't worry, we'll train you. So please contact Pam Friedman if you are willing and interested in helping out. The importance of allies was highlighted for me this past week when I went and saw the movie October 8th. Have any of you seen it? A handful of you. October 7th was, of course, the day of the deadly Hamas attack on Israel. The movie October 8th is the story of the days and months that followed, specifically the disturbing rise of anti-Semitism. Already on October 8th, even before Israel began its military response, American streets and campuses erupted with virulent anti-Semitic protests. Those continued and morphed into attacks on Jews and Jewish-owned businesses. The silence of human rights organizations, the anti-Israel resolutions passed by city governments, the apparent inability or unwillingness of some leaders and academics to address dangerous rhetoric, not to mention today when fighting anti-Semitism has itself become politicized, has made these painful and scary days for Jews. One scene in the movie sticks with me. Sheryl Sandberg is interviewed, and she tells the following story. She was speaking with a friend, and unplanned, she just kind of bursts out, "Would you hide me?" The friend was like, What are you talking about? Hide you? How many of you know what Sheryl Sandberg means when she says, will you hide me? She meant that if anti-Semitism got really bad in America, could she rely on her friend to protect her? Have any of you ever had that thought? This is the impact of generational trauma known by the Jewish people and aggravated since October 8th. If you want to be an ally, if you want to understand us, if you want to stand by us, I encourage you to go see the movie, which ends in town this week. And if you're thinking, like I was thinking, I really don't need to go see the movie because I follow the news very closely, I know most of it, then I encourage you to take a friend who isn't Jewish and discuss it with them afterwards. What does being an ally in the fight against anti-Semitism look like? It means learning to identify anti-Semitism and recognizing anti-Semitic stereotypes. Sometimes it's easy and blatant, like in Charlottesville when they were chanting, "Jews shall not replace us." At other times it's more subtle, like portraying Jews as being responsible or accountable for everything that happens in Israel. It means amplifying Jewish voices and allowing Jews to define their identities and explain their own experiences. Being an ally means confronting anti-Semitism when you see it, and if you're in a position of authority, making sure that it will not be tolerated. And it means speaking up when legitimate criticism of Israel crosses the line and becomes an attack on Israel's right to exist. Now, regarding that last point, let me be clear. To be a Jewish ally doesn't mean that you have to like the taste of gefilte fish or even matzah, nor does it mean that you have to agree with or even like the current Israeli government. Many Jews and many Israelis don't. It doesn't mean that you have to ignore the death and destruction in Gaza. How can you? It's horrific. And it certainly doesn't mean that you can't support a Palestinian self-determination. I do, as long as it does not come at the expense of the Jewish state. But being an ally does mean standing up against those who demonize Israel using age-old anti-Semitic tropes. It means standing up against those who delegitimize Israel, denying our people's right to self-determination or questioning Israel's right to exist. It does mean speaking out against those who hold Israel to double standards, not expected of other countries, and ignoring their actions in similar contexts. It's easy to go see a movie, not so easy to be an ally. First, it requires learning about Jewish and Israeli history and using a trusted news source. One new app might help. It's a new app that has been developed by folks in our local community to help fight anti-Semitism. It's called Emissary. I think it's emissary, the number 4, all.org. And it uses AI to answer questions. I asked Emissary why allies are important in the fight against anti-Semitism. I won't go into its full answer, but just quote its 4th and final bullet point, which is my final point as well. It said, allies can bridge gaps between different communities, promoting interfaith dialogue and understanding, which is essential for lasting change. Together, we can create stronger bonds of understanding that break down walls of hope. Indeed, that is our hope. Vayakel Moshe kol adat b'nei Yisrael. The entire community gathered, Jews by birth, Jews by choice, interfaith families, and allies. Chavarim, our future is intertwined with one another and with the bigger mixed multitude that is America, our multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious democracy. When we are arevim ze bezeh, the same shoresh, erev arevim, when we are arevim ze bezeh, responsible for one another, then our erev rav, our multitude, will indeed be sweet as we bring about shalom rav, an era of peace. Ken Yiratzon ben Amar, amen. To you. We'll continue back in our Sidurim Amud 155, page 155 with Musaf.